Welcome to the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It is Saturday, February the 27th, 2021. On this episode of the Politicrat, tribalism in politics. Why do we so fervently stick by people we support when they do something wrong in politics? When they do something egregious and atrocious in politics? And I'm not talking about forgiveness. I'm talking about, well, the indefensible. Coming up next. Welcome back. So before I get into the topic for this episode, I just wanted to make you aware, in case you have not been aware, of some of the things that happened overnight here in the United States, or at least one of the major things that happened late into the night if you are on the east coast of the United States, fairly late into the night. And just to get people up to speed, because some people may not be aware of this, but many of you may well be aware of this by the time this episode is available, that on Friday night, the House of Representatives here in the United States in Congress voted for the $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief package. The House voted by 219 votes for yes and 212 for no. So it was a very narrow vote. And it turns out, apparently, that two Democrats voted against the bill. Two Democrats voting against. And all of the Republicans voting for the bill. Excuse me. What? Yeah, right. 210 Republicans, all of them voting against the relief bill. So all the Democrats but two voted in favor, and every Republican voted against. Now, I know some of you probably are wondering, who are those two Democrats? Well, I think their names are floating around on social media somewhere. I can tell you that if you go to, at least as of the time I recorded this episode, if you go to the house.gov website, it will say that the actual look for the result was 219 to 210, with one Democrat not voting and one Republican not voting. Well, that's strange. I don't think that that is a sufficiently updated appraisal on the website. I don't think so. But again, as we have seen, this is what happens. There are Democrats who decide to vote against these bills. And I think that this is inexcusable. It's inexcusable. This should not be happening. I mean, I get it. People can vote the way they're going to vote. I just think that for anybody to be voting against this bill, it's immoral, isn't it? And the bill, to me, doesn't go far enough. Granted, the House bill did include the $15 an hour minimum wage provision, but we all know what's going to happen to that in the Senate, because, as I mentioned in yesterday's episode, the Senate parliamentarian thought, oh no, we can't have $15 an hour for you peasants. So in that person, I think it's a she, in her, perhaps, I think, in her infinite wisdom, she decided, no, this is not fit for standards. You know, I mean, it's just reconciliation and yeah, you can find all kinds of excuses and reasons for not providing the American public a minimum wage that's decent and halfway respectable. But when it comes to dropping bombs in Syria, Congress doesn't even get consulted on that. And that's what I want to get to, by the way, because yes, the Senate's going to vote on the bill on Monday in terms of the COVID relief bill, and it's going to go through, but it's not going to have that provision in it. That provision of the minimum wage is going to be stripped out, which is, that's an atrocity unto itself, isn't it? Isn't that a form of violence? I would say it is. I would definitely say it's a form of violence. But I do want to get on to this next and central topic, which is tribalism in politics, and specifically as regards what happened in Syria just a couple of nights ago, couple of days ago. Or it could have been, if you look at Syria, time in Syria, it could have been on Friday that it happened, in the early morning hours. And this is the thing that I ever so gently or ever so briefly, ephemerally touched upon in yesterday's episode, which is that there is this nexus, this chain, this nexus of events that occurs. The vaccine shots, over 510 plus thousand people dead in the United States from coronavirus. You have the barbed wire and the high fence around the U.S. Capitol perimeter, a militarized zone. You've got President Biden dropping bombs, not him literally doing it, but you get what I mean. The military dropping bombs under him, under his administration, on his watch, on Syria. And this is a real, and I talked about the other things too. This is a real issue. And quite frankly, I think people like Jake Tapper, I don't watch, as I keep saying like a broken record here, the needle needs to be changed on the stylus of the vinyl, because I keep repeating this. I don't watch the corporate news media, US, because it is not just manufactured consent. That's been going on forever, and I'm not trying to dismiss that. It is media that now does not have any credible news on it. I mean, the news is credible. I should just retract that. It's that the people who bring it to you, some of them are just not honest brokers. And what I mean by that is the people, when I say the people who bring it to you, I'm not even talking about the producers and all of that. I'm talking about the pundit class. These people have a lot of self-interest. These people are arguing often on behalf of corporations, on behalf of whichever company has put them where they are. And a whole industry in news has been built around punditocracy. And it's horrible. It's killed the news. So let's stipulate that for a moment. There's very little that you learn from these people. They may be bright, they may not be bright. They are being paid or not being paid. But if they are being paid, some of them perhaps a little bit more handsomely than your look early in the morning when you wake up, is that these people, you don't learn very much from them. They're paid to say something. They are paid to say anything. In fact, the news organizations and bosses who pay them don't care really what they say. I mean, they do care, obviously, about some of the obvious bright line things, but what we've seen with pundits and what we've seen, forget even Fox, oh my goodness, they just say anything they want on Fox. I mean, it did cost Trish Regan her job. Remember Trish Regan? Cost her job on Fox Business News or whatever that network, Fox Business Network or whatever it's called. Didn't cost Tucker Carlson any job, though. He keeps spouting racist, misogynistic BS, and it doesn't stop him. He's getting millions of dollars a year to do it, too. And they pay these people to say these racist, misogynistic things. I mean, and then the pundit class is a disaster. You do not learn, very little do you learn from them. You don't come away from listening to pundits going, oh, wow, that's really great. I mean, maybe occasionally you might. But what is their function other than to influence the way you think about the events you are watching? I mean, if you saw some of the people who do punditry in a bar, you wouldn't even look at them. Well, you'd see them, but you wouldn't pay attention to them, is my point. And all it means is you've given people a stage to wax poetic BS, while it leaves you, if you watch it, being more infuriated, with a higher blood pressure, and with a lack of any kind of hope in the world for anything. It's soul-sucking, and that's the point of it. As I've always said, when was the last time, and I've asked this on Twitter at the Popcorn REEL quite often, quite frequently, when was the last time you saw someone on corporate news media, on CNN, for example, or MSNBC, as a pundit who was making under $20,000 a year? When was the last time you saw that? Of course, never. That is my case closed. But this whole thing with Syria is a real issue. And it's being swept under the rug, not only by a number of the corporate news media entities. I'm saying this based on what I'm reading, not whether it's on network television, corporate network TV. You tell me if it's on cable news. Tell me if they've had lots of discussion about Syria, or if it's just been given the so-called quote-unquote drive-by treatment. Certainly the wrong context to use that term in, but it's the fly-by-night treatment, I think. Might be better. Flyover treatment might be even better. Is that what they're giving it? The flyover states? The flyover treatment? And to say that this was not egregious and problematic is a real issue. The Pentagon put out a statement, John Kirby, where have we seen John Kirby before? Because he wasn't doing that job under Obama. He was not the point person, the press person, the point person. He was not there for the Obama administration in the Pentagon. No, John Kirby, he wasn't anywhere to be found. But there he is again, just like some of the other folks. Tom Vilsack as the agricultural secretary, like he never left, except for 4 years. And he got his job back. Vivek Murthy, who is the Surgeon General, I know he's going to be confirmed at some point if he hasn't already. I know that these are capable people. I'm not knocking, I don't know about Vilsack. I know that Murthy is Murthy is capable, very, very good, and I guess that's why they brought him back. But I say, my goodness, you couldn't find another person in the entire US of A to be your Surgeon General? I mean, was it a lazy process? Why can't you give someone else a chance? I mean, really, with all the talent that we've got in the United States of America, the only person you could come up with was the same guy that Obama had? I mean, again, I think Dr. Murthy, Vivek Murthy, is excellent. Excellent. I think he did a good job last time. But does that mean that you just say, oh, he did a good job last time, let's put him back in? And that is the clubhouse mentality. But why don't you? Why didn't you? I mean, again, it's after the Lord Mayor's show. I get it. In other words, the horse is already bolted from the barn. That I understand. But again, it's irksome. It really is. But I am not leaving this Syria situation at all. Because the lead into all of this is, let me just put this to you, dear listener. There was earlier this month, as we almost are at the end of the month, earlier this month there was a strike in Syria, or wherever it was, that I think either killed a couple of people or killed some people. I shouldn't say it so casually. We do have this very casual assessment, some of us do, about death. And I fell into that trap just now when I just described the events the way I did. Now, the situation is this. A couple of weeks ago, there was a strike against some of the allies for the U.S., and I think a U.S. service person was injured in that strike conducted by Bashar al-Assad, I believe, who is the president of Syria. Syria has been in a war now forever, it seems. A civil war and a war forever. It's been such a dicey thing. This was, even in the Obama administration, it was a really dicey situation. Point is that on Thursday night, word came down that for that mid-February aggression or attack, however you choose to characterize it, obviously, I believe it killed or hurt people whose interests lie with the U.S., and it wounded, injured a U.S. service person. And on Thursday night, the news came down that at President Biden's direction, this is from John Kirby, who is now once again the press secretary in the Pentagon, or at least the top official, one of the top officials in the Pentagon. He issued a statement saying that on President Biden's direction, a military airstrike occurred in Syria. Bombs were dropped on Syria and targeting some place or other. And voila, bingo. One person one person was killed. And this is what I had said in yesterday's episode. One person had been killed and several had been wounded. Now, since then, this report has come in the Associated Press. And the headline is the following. And by the way, this is from yesterday. This was much later on in the day. Biden, strikes in Syria sent warning to Iran to, quote, be careful, end quote. President Joe Biden said Friday that Iran should view his decision to authorize U.S. airstrikes in Syria as a warning that it can expect consequences for its support of militia groups that threaten U.S. interests or personnel. Quote, you can't act with impunity. Be careful, end quote, Biden said when a reporter asked what message he had intended to send with the airstrikes, which the Pentagon said destroyed several buildings in eastern Syria, but were not intended to eradicate the militia groups that used them to facilitate attacks inside Iraq. Let's stop there for a second. You can't act with impunity, President Biden said. Hold on a second. What was the drone strike then? Why did we in the U.S. drop these bombs? It wasn't a drone strike, it was airstrikes. Why did we do this? I understand there is a retaliation, but is that really an excuse to do this? And is it an excuse to do it just 4 weeks into your administration? Is it an excuse to do it when you always talk about diplomacy is the best way to do things? When you've touted for 4 weeks, in fact, for months during the campaign, that diplomacy was the best way, steady hand, diplomacy. That's what was being touted during the campaign. When a few years ago, when Turkey and Russia got into some really hairy situations with a strike, and I don't think there was any retaliation. And there was all these people in the previous administration, or at least the pundits, were saying, don't strike back, don't strike back. There were people in the State Department who were talking about, well, they shouldn't strike back. And now I don't see anybody in any State Department saying any damn thing because President Biden decided not to talk to Congress. Yes, the reports are that he alerted them. But that is not the role of a commander-in-chief, to alert Congress. The role of the commander-in-chief, when you're dealing with things like this, is to actually consult with Congress. You don't just make up your mind and go, oh, I'll just tell Congress that I'm going to do this. That's not consulting with Congress. This is really infuriating to me. Why on earth is this happening? And why are so many people quiet about it? I could read, I'm going to give you a link. I'm going to put a link to that article into this episode today, because it goes on to talk about, this is legal and appropriate. At least the AP framing of it is that the administration official defended the Thursday night airstrikes as legal and appropriate. Then there's a quote later on from the brand new Defense Secretary, one Mr. Secretary Lloyd Austin, who had ties or does have ties or did have ties to Raytheon. He says that he has disavowed that now. He no longer has ties with Raytheon, a defense contractor. And I've talked about the military-industrial complex here the last day or two. And one of the things that he said is the following. Now, I hope I have it here, because I did have it. I literally had it before I started this podcast episode, and now I have lost the frame here. But the point, and I'll recall the comment. The comment is that we did. This is incredible stuff, but not that incredible. Lloyd Austin has said that, I got it here now. I'm confident in the target that we went after. We know what we hit, end quote. I mean, everybody knows that when a country strikes another country with bombs, those bombs do not always hit their quote unquote intended targets, number one. Number two, we also know that civilians get hit and killed. And some people will say, well, they put their civilians there. I mean, that's so arrogant. Even if that were true, that's such an arrogant posture from our side of things here in the United States. Or from the United States. I should say our side, but you know. This is really not good. And there is some, and the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki telling reporters, Biden used his constitutional authority to defend U.S. personnel. He didn't. He did not consult with Congress. You can go and look in the Constitution yourself. I can link it to you if you want. When was the last time an American president ever consulted with Congress before they went and bombed somewhere? When? When was the last time? World War II? Well, I mean, when was the last time that happened? They didn't do it with Vietnam. When was the last time? And president after president after American president has done this. Doesn't matter which party they're from. And quite rightly, one of the Democratic senators, and I'm glad that he did speak up about this, Jake Tapper, not a senator, but I didn't get to finish that earlier. Jake Tapper in the news media, and I kind of waffled off on the corporate news media, but Jake Tapper sent out a tweet about this. Yeah, where are these people and where are you supporting this stuff? And, Senator Tim Kaine criticizing this. We need to get to the bottom of this. Offensive, quote from the same article, AP, offensive, this is Tim Kaine, the senator out of Virginia, the Democrat. Couple of senators coming out against this from the Democratic side. Offensive military action without congressional approval is not constitutional absent extraordinary circumstances, Tim Kaine said. And here's Chris Murphy, Democratic senator out of Connecticut. Lawmakers must hold the current administration to the same standards as any other. Quote, retaliatory strikes are not necessary to prevent an imminent threat, must get congressional authorization. And I totally agree. That's exactly what the Constitution, it basically says that. Not exactly that. So why is it there's so many people who are Biden supporters? And I voted for Joe Biden. Why are people being, and this is the tribalism part that I'm trying to get to. Why are so many people so quiet now about this? Or why are they saying very little about it? And it might be you, it might be someone you know, it might be someone you've seen on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever, whomever. Or it could be the general Democratic Party in general. It could be the punditocracy that you might watch and fall in love with, or fall out of love with, or throw shoes at the TV at, or fill in your desired vocation, whichever you do, if you do watch that stuff. Because I can't watch it anymore. I've stopped. I cannot. It is not something that's smart. I'd rather go and read a book, which is one of the things I do. Or maybe someone might, watch Netflix or something that you might actually get something more edifying out of Netflix than you do. Well, I'm sure you do from listening to these. Anyway, and again, I'm not even commenting on any of these people personally, because some of these people are very decent people. Others of them are not. And I'm not joking about that. And the people who know what I'm talking about know what I am talking about. But this tribalism thing, what do you think, dear listener? What do you think? Why is it that some of us, if not many of us, are so quiet about this with Joe Biden dropping bombs on Syria? And again, the other thing that doesn't get talked about, again, you're dropping bombs on a country that is not Sweden, right? That is not Norway. And I get it, someone smart in the back of the room is going to say to me, well, they're European and Scandinavian countries or whatever. Ha 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 ha. They didn't do anything. But that's not my point. My point is they're dropping bombs on countries with brown populations or black populations. That's what we do best here in the United States. We love to drop bombs on people in Asia. We did it in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We love to drop bombs on black and brown countries with black and brown populations. We love to do that. We're doing it all over the world. The United States has done this for, my God, 100 years, if not more or less. That's what the 20th century was, dropping bombs on Japan. And this is in the non-World War II context, although, 1945, okay, the war had just about ended, or whenever it was in 45, June. Is it June of 45 or July of 45? And those bombs were dropped after that, folks. Those bombs were dropped in August of 1945, August 6th and August 9th. Fat man and little boy, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan. This country loves to do that. We love to drop bombs. And that's a real problem. And we just passively move on and nobody says a damn word. Nobody. If it's a Republican administration, we're all upset. But when a Democratic administration does it. And I'm sure there was some outrage when President Truman dropped those bombs in 45. Because that's who was in charge at the White House at the time. That was who was in the White House. Whether he was in charge or not, of course, is quite another story. But Truman, that happened on his watch. Just like the Executive Order 9066 happened under another Democratic president's watch. Roosevelt, FDR, he signed that order. That's his order, his executive order, interning Japanese Americans in camps in the United States. This is really problematic, folks. It's really problematic. And why is it that we're so quiet when the Democratic president does these things? When Obama drone struck everything he could, more drones. I can't even talk. More drone strikes than any other president. More deportations than any other president. Why were people so quiet about that? And they weren't deporting white people. They're deporting black and brown people. Is that why many white people were quiet? Is that why some black people were quiet? Some brown people were quiet. Now, there were brown and black people who weren't quiet, but there were some who were. Does this now go down to class lines as well? Why is it that the tribalism is when Trump drops bombs, or when Trump did what he did in 2017 in Yemen and killed like 30 people, including a few Americans, including an 8-year-old girl, and a member of an American U.S. military force that went in there, a SEAL team or what, and one of the two of them got killed, and we were all upset about it. When George W. invaded Iraq, a lot of people were upset about it. People all around the world, and the media, of course, kept banging that war drum, regardless of which party is dropping the bombs. And it shows you where the military and industrial complex really lies. But the real question, and I've meandered a little bit, is why are we, whoever the we is, if the we applies to you, then you put up your hand and own it, right? Hopefully. If it doesn't apply to you, it's something to think about. It's something that any of us to think about. Whether we are critical of President Biden for doing this or not. But we should be critical of him, and we should not be silent about this. Because if you're going to rightfully castigate George W., Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, Donald Trump, or any other Republican president for doing something that's really odious and human rights violating and basically war criming, then you have to condemn all the Democrats for doing the same thing. You have to. What is this pom-pom waving, or I'm going to not say anything when Joe Biden does something, but when Trump or Reagan or George W. does something, you're upset about it? Again, if the you doesn't apply, then you don't have to raise hackles at my inquiry, my line of inquiry here. But it's a line of inquiry that should be thought about, and not just thought, THOUGHT about, but just really discussed. This is the tribalism. It's never okay when the other team, whatever that team is. I know James O'Brien of LBC talks about in the UK, he talks about this a lot too, about the yellow, whichever, not yellow, but the one team or another. So I kind of borrow that a little bit. But why is it that when your guy does bad, heinous things, some of you, whoever you are, some people are so quiet, they don't say anything? That's really problematic to me, because that means that you endorse and approve that thing, just not when those persons do it over there in that corner. This is the same thing that I decried almost a year ago, or just about a year ago, when it started to be clear. Well, it was a few weeks short of a year, when it became clear that Tara Reid was trying to get a story out to the mainstream corporate news media en masse. And she had done an interview in January of 2020 with Democracy Now! And with, I believe, the first person to do the interview with was Katie Halper, the podcaster that you can hear. And she's doing a great job, Katie Halper. So, continued success to you, Katie, for your work. Because it's important. What she does in other podcasts, but particularly Katie Halper's show, I think is very good. And on that show about a year ago, just over a year ago, what's her name? Tara, goodness gracious, this is bad. I did 2 episodes on this. I can't remember. This is about getting older, I think. But Tara Reid had made it very clear that Joe Biden raped her. And the same people who are silent now were silent then. You didn't see anything coming out of their Twitter accounts. They were quiet. Is it because they didn't believe Tara Reid? Or is it because they just didn't want to say anything against their guy who was running for president at that time a year ago? And they didn't want to derail him. Oh, no. No, indeedy. I do not want to say a word about Joe Biden. And then after Joe Biden walked in, when the next rape happened at the hands of some powerful piece of crap, they all weighed in again. They all invade and weighed in on, oh, this is horrible. I mean, that really bankrupts you morally, doesn't it? Doesn't that morally bankrupt you when you're silent about your guy, but then when someone else does the same thing or is accused of it, you have plenty to say? That doesn't give you a lot of credibility or integrity when you are waving your pom-poms, defending someone, but when the other guy does it, you've got you're waving your pom-poms silently by not saying a word when it's your guy. But when the other guy does it, you've got a lot to say. But as I always say, rape is absolutely reprehensible, and it's evil, and it's wrong, and these bastards who do it should be under the blimmin' jail. And I don't believe there should be this selective silence about this, because we have to continue to speak out and speak up against rape. And we've got to speak up and speak out against what's being done in our name when anybody, no matter which political party they belong, drops bombs from the White House, drops bombs from the Pentagon on countries, and does so and doesn't even consult with Congress. That is a human rights violation at minimum. And we need to be talking about this. Because I know, God forbid, if the last guy, Trump, was in office now, and this happened, all the people that you are not hearing from around what happened with Joe Biden dropping these bombs in Syria on Thursday night, you'd be hearing from every single one of them. You'd have a roll call. I could call the roll. Every one of those persons would be saying something on Twitter about it. And that's disgraceful. Some of those people may be listening to me right now. But that's really disgraceful that you're going to be silent when Joe Biden does this, but if Donald Trump or if Ronald Reagan or Richard Nixon or bloomin', George W. Bush or his daddy had dropped these same bombs, each and every one of you would have been saying something about it. And rightly so. But what about right now? What about right now? You heard what I read from Tim Kaine. You heard what I read from Chris Murphy. These are 2 Democratic United States senators. And what they said makes a whole lot of sense to me. What Jake Tapper tweeted makes a whole lot of sense to me. And it was words to the effect of, oh, hey, I see you guys in the back there who, you like this guy, your president, you like him so much, but you're saying nothing about Syria, and you're wrong, and that's wrong. And he's correct. to call those folks out? Where are you all? Where are you all standing up and saying this is not right, not in our name? President Biden, you're absolutely wrong about this. You shouldn't have dropped these bombs, and you shouldn't have dropped them without consulting Congress. Telling Congress, oh, we're going to drop these bombs is not consultation. That is you telling them. It's like you telling your spouse, oh, dear, I'm going to do this today. And you just go off and do it. And your spouse says, be careful, have a good day. I mean, that's how that's how President Biden and the Pentagon treated Congress. Oh, well, we notified them that we were going to. I mean, that means jack. You have got to, if you are someone worth your salt, you have to abide by the Constitution that you so fervently speak of. You have to consult Congress, and Congress has to deliberate before giving its approval or rejecting the effort. That's what this is about. That's what this is about. And Joe Biden has been steeped in foreign policy for nearly 50 years. He voted for the Iraq War. He voted for it. So did Hillary Clinton. So did John Kerry. And John Kerry is a part of the Biden administration. This is really problematic. And some of you listening to me were involved in those marches in Iraq. Well, not in Iraq, but you were involved in the anti-war effort. You were involved in that February, and I participated in this too, February of 2003, when 10 million people around the world marched against George W. Bush in a basic last gasp attempt, last ditch attempt to tell him, no, this is not in our name, not in our name. We do not support this. And this was just days before he did go to war. It was about a month because it was March 19th or 20th. March 20th in Iraq, March 19th here in the US, when Bush started these war games, not war games, dropped bombs on Iraq and Iraqi civilians. Launching missiles. I mean, what happened? What changed? Was it because the president now has a D in parentheses after his last name? Is that what's changed for you? Is it because you like access to power and President Biden is your buddy? You know him, you've had conversations with him. So whether you're a celebrity, an athlete, or whomever you are, a musician, whomever, and you have access to him, and so you want that to continue, and access to power is an aphrodisiac, don't you know? Don't you just know it? Is that why you don't say anything? Are you going to use the justification that's being used that, oh, well, we're retaliating? If your little boy hits a little girl and you question your boy and your boy says, well, it's because she kicked me in the leg. Are you as a parent going to say, well, that's good. Good job, dad. Good job, lad. Good job, lad. Are you going to say that to your son? Are you just going to stay, or are you going to stay silent and not say anything? How does that work in the world you live in? How does that work in the world you live in? Because if you're not going to say anything to your son when your son slaps or hits a little girl at school who may have just kicked your son in the leg, then that makes you as a parent some kind of moral monster. If you're not going to at least step in and say, son, you're not supposed to hit any girl, female at all. not supposed to hit any woman. No, no, no. If you don't tell your son right there and then that that is wrong and that you're going to be punished by me if you continue to do this, and I'm going to sit down here and train you to respect girls and women, and I'm going to train you to say, I don't care if a woman hits you, if she kicks you, you don't do that. You don't hit back. If you're not saying that to your child, that makes you a moral monster too, doesn't it? Welcome back. Why so quiet? Why so quiet? And we can go into the epistemological and the we can go into the epistemology of why human beings behave like this. Why we cheer for the politician that we vote for when that person drops bombs, but when the other person we didn't vote for, who happens to win, drops those bombs, we are upset. Are we doing this entirely based upon who's wearing what shirt, as James O'Brien would say? Are we doing that? What's the function of that? What does that make us as people? To be silent about what President Biden has done. And I've told you this many times. If you are a regular listener to this podcast, you know that I don't have any loyalty when it comes to these politicians on whichever political party platform they stand or sit. I have no loyalty to them other than when it comes to the vote, other than when it comes to making sure these people do the right thing and getting behind them and calling them and everything else. Other than that, I do not want to go and have a beer with any of them. Even the ones I really like. I don't want to have an alcoholic beverage with them. I want to make sure and do my part, my small little itty bitty part, to make sure that they do the right thing. And you want that too. So we call up Congress, we call the White House, we do this, we call our local people, because that's really important. We call the state representatives, and our state representative here. Well, I've been a definite broken needle on that. I need to replace that needle on the vinyl on Gavin Newsom, because I have gone ad infinitum on him. But the point is, this is what we do. We've got to care about these things. It's our taxpayer dollars that are being used to kill civilians or kill people. And one thing I didn't say in that report that I'm going to link to from the AP is that 22 people were killed. Now, there's an organization in London that said it was members of a militia or paramilitary, paramilitary group that were killed. But does that make it right? 22 people? I don't care who they are, civilians or not. Does that make it right? What did Dr. King say? I said this in yesterday's episode. I ain't gonna study war no more. I can hear someone saying, well, this isn't a war, Omar. This isn't a... What do you think that is, though? When you're dropping bombs, you've killed 22 people. What is that? A training ground exercise? Again, we have got to, and I've been talking about this all month long on this podcast, we've got to stop speaking this insane language. Well, it was in retaliation. Little boys playing with bombs. Little boys with bombs is what we're talking about here. I'm not having it. You can't be having this. And then just go about your day. Because at the end, that implicates you too, doesn't it? I mean, I talked about this a bit last November. I voted for Joe Biden, but like I said, I voted knowing in my strong belief that he did rape Tara Reid. And I even asked on these podcast waves, doesn't that not make me complicit? And I agreed that it did. It makes me complicit too, to vote for someone that you know or believe is a rapist. That certainly makes you complicit. So I'm holding myself to account, but at the very least, listen, I'm not trying to, I don't want gold medals or cookies. I don't want them. I don't want a blue ribbon. I'm just saying what I am saying. And it's reprehensible, isn't it? I get that life goes on and we've got immediate things in front of us that are bigger fish for us to fry personally in our lives with our family, kids, yeah, of course. But don't we want to teach our children to be better than what we are or what we were? Like I said, that's why I put that example there at the end of that previous segment about someone telling their child, whether it's you or someone else, telling their child nothing when it's found out that their little boy slapped or hit in any form a little girl who happened to have kicked their little boy. Isn't that, how can we not say anything? How are people out there silent about what happened on Thursday night? And notice it was Thursday night. It was fairly late on the East Coast, or at least when I learned this information. It might have been earlier, but it was Thursday night. It was after probably 9 o'clock on the East Coast. You're easing into Friday at that point. Mentally, you're already at Friday. And here on the West Coast, it was 6:30 or so when I first heard about it. And I talked about this, I think, briefly yesterday. But the point is that this is wrong. This is wrong. I do not care that one person was injured. I do care about human life and people being hurt. But what I'm saying is that one person being injured, and some people, again, forgive me for saying that one or two people who lost their lives in a strike that was done by Syria a couple of weeks ago does not warrant 22 people dying, and certainly doesn't warrant you carrying this out and not consulting with Congress and allowing Congress to deliberate about this. And as Senator Murphy said, where's the imminent danger? Or whichever one, it could have been Kane, it could have been Murphy. Where was the imminent threat to the United States? Where was it? And you're dropping these bombs, and everybody just, nothing to see here, and they just go on about their business. That's violence too, that we're perpetrating as people. If we just dust ourselves off and just go, nothing to see here, I'm just waiting for my next vaccine jab. Is that really the kind of human beings we want to be? Is it? Or is it that we don't care about brown people in Syria? Is that what it is? Would we have, or those of you who stayed silent with President Biden, would that silence have been the same if it was someone from, and I know this wouldn't happen, but this is just the hypothetical. I get it. It's not going to happen. This scenario I'm about to describe is not going to happen. But if it was someone in Northern Ireland that got bombed, if it was somebody where the U.S., and I know Joe Biden would not do that, but as I said, I want to just put this out there. If Joe Biden had dropped a bomb on Sweden, Germany, would we still be silent about that? Would some of the people who are not saying anything, do you think they'd still be silent about that? Now, again, I know that would never happen hypothetically, right? In the hypothetical, that's a hypothetical. It would never happen in reality, not in 2021 or beyond. But what if that was, and again, America, generally speaking, with a few exceptions, doesn't drop bombs on countries with heavy white populations. Just doesn't. It's always black and brown countries or Asian countries. Almost always. Now, there have been some obvious exceptions. Obvious exceptions. Of course, Germany, well, I get it. I know the World War II. I get it. Right? They're exceptions. But our foreign policy, ours, the United States government's foreign policy, is about dropping bombs on black and brown persons in their countries. And I told you that the foreign policy shapes what the domestic policy is. It's informed. I mean, it informs domestic policy. And look at what we're doing. Black people here can't get vaccine shots. Not getting them. Brown people not getting them. That's why in yesterday's episode I said connect these events. These things do not happen in a vacuum. They are not coincidences. They are not coincidences at all. If any of what I've said over the last hour or so implicates you, and you know deep in your heart that you have not said anything when a Democratic president drops bombs, whether it's Obama, whether it's Biden, whether it's Clinton, or anyone else, Truman. If you've been that person, and if you are that person in this situation with Joe Biden and these airstrikes in Syria, and your taxpayer dollars are going to that bombing, and you're not saying anything and speaking out against it, ask yourself why. Ask yourself, if you've been listening for the last roughly an hour or so, and you know that those comments are comments that, yeah, that's me. Ask yourself why you're not saying anything. Explore that. And then change that posture and actually speak up and speak out. Call the White House switchboard. Tweet the White House. Tweet Joe Biden at POTUS. I would give you the phone number for the White House switchboard, but I'm not exactly sure what it is, and I don't want to give out an incorrect number. And I apologize yesterday, by the way, for misspelling Lindsey Boland's first name. It's Lindsey, and I misspelled it. I said S-A-Y. And Lindsay does have a couple of different spellings. Actually, 4 different spellings. 5, maybe. But that's not the point. That's not an excuse. That is, I'm sorry that I got that wrong. And her name is correctly spelled as Lindsey. But I want people to ask themselves why. Why is it that they have not said anything about what President Biden did on Thursday night? And the defense secretary's got to come in for a lot of stick about this too. Secretary Austin. I think this is not good. And this is what I said before. We can't be staying silent during these Democratic presidents' terms. This happened during Obama. Of course, Code Pink were out there, and good for them. They were among those groups. And I dare say they've kicked up a fuss, rightly so, about this. And the complacency and the apathy led us to, in part, one of many things that led us to who we got afterwards, after Obama. And if we don't start speaking up now against this kind of garbage that President Biden did this week, we're going to have another Republican right up. He or she will slide right in there in 2024. Lickety split. You'll lose the House next year. Lickety split. You'll have these gun-toting MFers with their guns behind them and their picture. I mean, they're doing this for a very deliberate reason, folks. Zoom chats with their friggin' guns as the backdrop. I mean, you will have them running the bloomin' house in a year and a half, in a year's plus time, if we do not start opening our big mouths and put pressure on these corporate Democrats, any Democrats, and let Jamie Harrison hear your voice too, by the way, the chair of the DNC. Let him hear your voice. Let all these people hear your voice. You've got to get engaged. You've got to speak up. It doesn't take but 5 seconds to do so. Fire off a tweet. Call up the White House switchboard. You can find their number. I really don't want to give it out. I'll find it and I'll put it in the liner notes of this episode. But you can look that up pretty simple and pretty quickly if you have online access. There's no excuse for this stuff, and we shouldn't be sitting here quietly tolerating it. It's really reprehensible, and it doesn't speak well of us as people. And it renders us hypocrites. We have to do better. We must. It is imperative. I mean, there's no use, quite frankly, you, whoever you is, shouting out, wear a mask, wear a mask. But then when bombs are dropped on a country and you're not even consulting Congress, you have nothing to say about it. You know, I know they say that everything is connected is a cliche, but it's the truth. Everything is connected. And how we behave dictates a lot of what we're going to do. We can only control what we can control. And let's start with speaking up against this horrible thing that happened. Dropping bombs on a country. And the arrogance of it all. Well, we know what we hit. Do you? Really? And does it make it right that you dropped the bombs? But we're pro-peace, right? We're anti-war, right? Thank you very much for listening to this edition of the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It's all happening at the Politicrat daily podcast online store, and you can go there right now at the-politicrat.myshopify.com. Lots of good new items, brand new, designed by yours truly. So please head to the Politicrat daily podcast online store now. Thank you very much.